Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Stoller.
And I'm Shannah Haley, and this is Inside Plano, where we take you behind the scenes of our city.
We'll introduce you to the faces and places who help make this a great place to live.
And give us lots of reasons to love Plano.
Happy December, listeners of Inside Plano, and happy December, Steve Stoller.
And thank you, Shannah Haley, and happy holidays. 'Tis the season.
It is, and it somehow is like, really, 'tis the season? It's upon us already, and I'm still living back in spring break land in March, but time stops for no one, not even COVID, right?
That's right. And 2020 has been such a disaster in so many ways that hopefully the holiday season will bring some true joy and cheer to the people of Plano.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know about you, but for me, there's no sense in holding on to bitterness and frustrations. What has happened is what has happened. And I'm looking forward to the holidays being a time when I can slow down a little bit and really focus on home and family. And I know that sounds ironic since we've been asked to slow down and stay home and stay with those that we love. But there's something different about being forced into a slowdown and choosing to slow down. And so I am choosing to slow down and do things that are enjoyable, like cooking with my husband. He's learning how to cook. And so we're spending a lot of time together in the kitchen, and that's really fun. And having Zooms with my family where we're recreating our favorite recipes and telling jokes. And it's an enjoyable way to spend time since we can't spend it really maybe the way we would prefer.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about it before and you hear it often. If there is one benefit and one true positive coming from the whole pandemic, it's that we really do get to spend a lot more time with our families, quality time, with the spouse, with the children. And that's been really a really positive thing out of this whole terrible thing.
Absolutely. I mean, I know your family, your sons are older, but what a blessing. You guys are going to look back on this time and say, this is time that you couldn't have gotten any other way or hoped to have, and you're really building great adult friendships with your kids as they mature and find their way on their own despite COVID, right? It's pretty cool.
Well, let's talk about all the great things going on in the City of Excellence.
Absolutely. So there's something I'm going to talk about it many, many times, probably not only in this podcast, because I feel pretty passionate about it. The City of Plano, Visit Plano, which is our Convention and Visitors Bureau, and the Plano Chamber of Commerce are working together on a campaign called Shop Plano. And really, we need participation of everyone who lives in Plano. Why? Because it's important to shop in Plano. Think about it, Steve. Our businesses that are small businesses in Plano, those owners, that is their family business. They're pouring their heart and soul into that business. That may be a retail shop, that may be a professional service, could even be a home-based business, but that is how they're providing for their family. And those are your Plano neighbors. They're your friends. They're people that you may worship with at your house of worship. Or, it may be a locally owned chain. Just because it's a chain store doesn't mean that it doesn't have local ownership, regardless of whether it's a chain or not. Sons, daughters, family members, friends, neighbors work in those businesses. And of course, the sales tax matters a lot. It's part of the way that things are funded in the city of Plano. So really what we're asking for you to do is, if you have a choice to go shopping, whether you do that curbside, whether you do that in store, and most of our stores have done a great job of putting in ways that you can shop safely in store, protocols and cleaning supplies and all of that. Or if you choose to shop online, we ask that you choose to shop Plano. It's the way we can be the best neighbor to one another, because supporting our business community is ultimately the way you support yourself, the way you support your friends, support your neighbors.
And it's no secret, Shannah, with the pandemic, a lot of these people with their businesses are really suffering.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen some businesses close, and we want to try and help these people, like you say, our neighbors, the best we can. And really the best way to help them is by becoming patrons of their businesses. So we're with you, Plano business community.
Absolutely. And so if you're listening to this podcast and you're a Plano business owner, you can always reach out to me to find more details about the program. Or if you are a listener and you live in Plano, when you purchase from Plano, share a photo of what it was or tell your story and use the hashtag Shop Plano. We are happy to share those so people can learn all of the wonderful ways that they can support our business community.
Shannah,
But
you know what one of my favorite events is during the holiday season? I'm so excited because it's coming up again.
yeah, tell me about it.
Dickens. And I've
Oh,
had the pleasure and the honor of emceeing it the last few years. And it's such a great festive environment. It's going to be a little different this year, like so many things. But Dickens in Downtown will be Saturday, December 5th. And of course, this year, due to the pandemic, it's going to be all virtual. But what we want to do is we want to join Plano Arts and Events every day at 4:30 on Facebook as we count down to our virtual tree lighting. Dickens holiday highlights include British baking, something you're familiar with, a former resident of England,
that's right.
right? Christmas cracker craft, creative s'mores, ice sculptures, handcrafted wooden toys, and a blacksmith. And again, it's virtual this year, but it's still a lot of fun. And no doubt it'll get you in the mood for the holidays.
Absolutely. Find the fun however you can. And hey, I've got something fun too that's also organized by our fantastic Plano Arts and Events team. So we talked last month in the podcast that they had parking lot pictures, threw up a big portable screen and showed a movie in the parking lot of Courtyard Theater. And you could buy a ticket so we could socially distance the cars and make sure that we had plenty of space for everyone to enjoy it safely. That has been a huge success. We've shown Black Panther. I can't even remember all of the films that they've shown, but just in time for the holidays, a relatively newer holiday classic, Elf. I mean, who doesn't want to watch Elf? So you'll want to get your tickets. That's going to sell out, I can promise you, because they all have sold out December 19th, and that'll be a really fun event.
I'm a big Will Ferrell fan, and I got to tell you, that's one of my favorite holiday movies.
I am not a Will Ferrell fan. Sorry, Will, if you're a fan of Inside Plano, but I do love Talladega Nights because Ricky Bobby, if you're not winning, you're losing, and Elf because who doesn't love Will Ferrell as Buddy the Elf?
I like when he sees Santa and he goes, "I know him."
Exactly.
Well, as always, we're going to have our local artist spotlights. That's on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and with our Monday online art classes, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, they have fans from all across the country. You and I, every now and then, get copies of comments that participants have sent in, and it amazes me how people are using those art classes as ways to pass the time while they're in chemotherapy, as ways to implement art class for homeschooling. It's just, or just relieving stress. It's really cool what they've done there. Well, I want to mention something that the Plano Police Department is doing, and I know that because of the timing of when the podcast releases, it will be too late for people to participate in this particular class, but it's going to be offered again, and it's just amazing. I know that the individuals involved in this. It's offered all year. It's called Positive Encounters. Officer Haley Dick and one of our retired police officers, Sergeant A.D. Paul, again retired, offer this class. It is for new and soon-to-be drivers who are on the autism spectrum. So the class for December is December 1st. So again, too late to sign up for it now. But really what it's focused on is helping individuals understand and manage emotions if they happen to be pulled over, and any contact that they may have with the police. They don't want that to be a frightening encounter, and they want it to lead to positive outcomes and have a positive encounter. And they encourage parents and guardians to attend the classes as well. So what a fantastic resource that's provided to individuals who may be on the autism spectrum, so that we can have a holistic, happy Plano community.
And the police department has really been on the cutting edge of working with those situations and trying to come up with positive solutions. So you really got to give them credit for doing that.
Absolutely.
Our public library continues to offer a myriad of fun and creative events. You can join the library on Zoom for what they call Adobe InDesign, custom e-cards. That's going to be on December 2nd. You can learn how to create unique and engaging digital cards with Adobe InDesign. You can sign up for a free 7-day trial of Adobe Creative Cloud. And in order to do that, the website is www.adobe.com/creative cloud. And then you can follow along with the class.
What a great way to help control your costs when it comes to holiday cards that you want to send out, or cards for any occasion, really. You know, the library, for the longest time, the doors were closed. Of course, they aren't now. They're open for browse, grab and go, and they're open for computer use. But they have never, ever slowed down on their programming. It all has just moved online. And that's still true because we don't have programs in the facilities. But this this program that they're doing, such a fun idea. And they've been doing it for a while now. I'm shocked that I haven't talked about it on the podcast. On Saturdays, they do Saturday story time at the farm. So they have partnered up with Heritage Farmstead Museum, and they record stories at the farmstead. So you can, learn about Chicken Little while sitting and watching the chickens too, while the librarians are out there, and a host of other stories. So great education focused nonprofit in our community, and a really fun way to engage your kids in the Saturday morning story time.
You know, Shannah, I know you like to cook, and
Yes.
I know a lot of people don't know this about me, but I like to cook too. It's
You're
actually,
a good cook.
I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. But if you still, whether or not you like to cook or not, the library has a program called Zoom for Cook the Book, Holiday Sweets. You can choose your favorite recipe, prepare the dish, and then be prepared to discuss virtually with other cooking enthusiasts. It can be your favorite appetizer, a main course, a dessert, which mine, of course, would be key lime pie, that you've been making at home for years or for the first time. So we look forward to a robust discussion of cooking while staying in.
So Steve, I'm trying to figure out how, with COVID, concerns this year, how I'm going to enjoy a bite of one of your freshly cooked hot because
Well,
they're the best.
you're just going to have to trust me this year. We'll keep it as clean and sanitized as possible when we're making lunch.
Curbside pickup, right?
That's right. I'll just drop it at your door and ring the bell.
I'll make you a loaf of my famous cinnamon sugar poppy seed loaf bread that I make every holiday season, which is so amazing.
That sounds delicious.
Well, you know what? While we're talking about food, because we could do a whole podcast just on food, let's talk about some of the classes that the library offers to keep your brain engaged. They are more than books, and so they focus a lot on STEAM education, science, technology, education, arts, math. So on STEAM Connections, on December 19th, they're going to teach you how to make a thermometer, and you're going to make a thermometer with them, and you'll use it with things that you can find in your house. They'll conduct an experiment after you make your thermometer that measures the temperature of ice cold water. So they used to do make and take programs where you'd go and you'd make it and you'd take it home. Now they're offering take and make programs. And this is one of those examples. So stop by the Plano Public Library, any location, pick up a supply kit starting the Wednesday before the program. You get one kit per family as long as supplies last. Then take out your kit on the 19th and join them for a fun how to make it program.
Shannah, did you know that our Oak Point Recreation Center actually has 2 resident elves?
I did not know that we had added elves. What a great value add.
And the plural of elf would be elves, not elves, right?
It's not 2 Will Ferrells though, right?
So Sherry and Scout are 2 resident elves. You can join them for a holly jolly good time at Santa's Workshop. During the virtual Night of Wonder in the workshop on December 11th, you'll listen to a story, write a letter to Santa, learn how to make sugar cookie icing,
I'm probably going to do this.
elf pancakes or waffles, and more. There might even be a special guest stopping by that will surely get you in the holiday spirit. Of course, you can't guess who that is, Shannah.
No, not at all.
It's a free event, and a Zoom link and PDF activity workbook will be provided prior to the event. With us is Jerry Cosgrove, the Director of Public Works for the City of Plano. Jerry, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Steve.
You know, I've known Jerry for a long time. Back when I was a reporter, I used to interview Jerry on a whole wide plethora of topics. But Jerry, we always like to start off the interview by asking people, what is it about you that most of us don't know?
I don't know what that'd be, but one thing is that I'm a New Englander. I was born in Massachusetts. I grew up in Connecticut. And my wife graduated from law school in 1981, and we had two places we could go for her work. One was to stay in Connecticut. The other one was to work for Atlantic Richfield. And we said, we'll take Atlantic Richfield. And she knew about 9 different places where we could go. And she says, you know, of all the ones on the list, Midland, Texas is the one I don't want to go to. So sure enough, Midland, Texas is the one we got. So we went out for our house hunting trip, and I made the mistake of letting her sit on the window side. So as we're flying in the Midland, she tells me, and we're the only ones in first class, she says, I'm not getting off the plane. So we land, the flight attendant comes by and says, you need help getting off? She says, no, I'm waiting for this plane to return to Dallas, Texas. So she proceeds to give my wife a bottle of wine. And my wife says, I'm not gonna do any good. I'm waiting to go to Dallas, Texas. And finally the flight attendant comes back with a second bottle of wine and says, please, you gotta leave the plane because I can't leave the plane until you do. So we finally did get off, and I think luckily for my wife, we only had to spend 1 year in Midland, Texas.
And now, how long have you been here at the city of Plano, Jerry?
I've been in the city of Plano now 22 years. And when I came here, I never envisioned being here 22 years. The longest I'd ever been in a job is about 7 years. And I thought that would be it. And I'm still here today.
Well, we're glad you are, and you do a great job. Well, let's talk about Public Works. Let's start off by talking a little about sidewalks. So COVID-19's really changed people's behavior. And we see so many more people using our trails, walking, running throughout the city. Give us some numbers. How many miles of sidewalks do we have in Plano?
Well, that's a hard number, Steve, because when we first started GIS, they did sidewalks in a strange way. Most of the time when we do our assets, it's either it's a point or it's a line. When we did sidewalks in the city of Plano, they did it as a polygon. Basically, they outlined the boundaries of the sidewalk. A couple of years ago, they went back and redid that. We're tweaking it a bit. So there's about 1,650 miles of sidewalk. So it'd be the same as we decided to go out for a walk today and walk from Plano, Texas to about Boise, Idaho.
Wow, that's amazing. Shannah and I, of course, both live in Plano, Jerry. If our sidewalks are broken, how do we get it fixed? And then who pays for it?
Okay. To get it fixed, again, you know, we always tell people you can use the Fix It app. You can always call our office. Our office number is 972-769-4140. You can email us as well. You know, my email is geraldc@plano.gov. And then once we get that request, we have someone who go out and take a look at it, see if it really needs to be fixed. And I can tell you that about 90% of the time, those requests are correct. That sidewalk needs some work.
Not all cities. Oh, I'm sorry, Jerry, go ahead.
And it's just, we get, especially, you know, you talk about COVID, it really drove up the number of requests we got for sidewalks. So we have 3 ongoing sidewalk projects. We have, I think it's 3 or 4 ongoing residential projects to do sidewalks as well. And even with all that work, we have a hard time keeping up with all the sidewalk requests. And you talk about cost. The one good thing about the city of Plano is that we don't charge you to repair the sidewalk. The city pays all that cost. There are some other cities in the area where they split it 50-50. And there are some that say, well, no, because it's in front of your house, if you want it repaired, you have to pay the entire bill. Now, there aren't too many of those, but there are a lot of the 50-50 splits. And there are some like us who will pay all the cost.
Shannah, didn't you say the other day we call it the Plano gift?
Yes, exactly.
And in our case too, is that not only do we take care of the sidewalk, but that lead walk that you have that goes from the sidewalk to the curb, we take care of that. And then the lead walk that goes from the sidewalk back towards your house, we're responsible for that first 2 foot. So if something goes wrong there, we'll fix that first. Usually it's 4 foot because we do a full panel. Occasionally we go back 2 panels just because we don't want to do a fix that creates a problem on the customer side.
Jerry, you go ahead, Shannah. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, Jerry, you actually your team fixed my sidewalk. I mean, it wasn't your team specifically, it was a subcontractor, but I was in that big neighborhood project that kind of almost a full city block, Spring Creek to Legacy and
Right.
Coit to Independence. And indeed, I had 2 panels on our house side of the easement and then 1 panel towards the street, because otherwise it would have been a little bit of a hiccup. One thing that I noticed, though, that you just said was that, you've had just this huge number of sidewalk requests. Is it reasonable if somebody saw a sidewalk that needed repaired and that they put in the request for that, is that going to get fixed, within the next 6 months? Is that a 2-week fix? Like, how does that get prioritized?
It varies, because again, like if you're in an area that we're already working in, like your neighborhood, we're in your neighborhood over 2 years. Yeah. So it's going to vary. If like I said, if we're working in the area, and also it depends on the severity of the problem. If you have a tripping hazard that is a 2-inch tripping hazard, we're not going to put you at the bottom list. We're probably going to go out and take care of that right away. So a lot of times I don't have a strict answer. It used to be at the point where we're at 18 months. We're getting closer to 6 months, but it's not 6 months for everyone. That's more the average. So again, we're spending a lot more on sidewalks than we ever did in the past. But like I said, with the COVID, the number of requests have gone up dramatically.
So Jerry, who does the repairs? You have some City of Plano crews that do some and some contractors do others?
Yeah. On our type of work, on average, the contractors do 80 to 85% of the work, and we do 15 to 20%. We tend to do the smaller jobs that it's more difficult for the contractor, because he says it's not really economical for you to go in and do that small repair. So we try to take care of the smaller ones and leave the bigger ones for the contractors.
A few years ago, a lot of people were noticing spray paint on their sidewalks that said T-ramp. What does that mean?
A few years ago, we got a letter from the U.S. Department of Transportation saying that we were not installing ramps properly. And the key item that they addressed was where a street intersects another street, not where it crosses, but where it just intersects, so it forms a T. And they said, you have to make means for the citizens to get from the bottom of the T to the top of the T. So that's what happened, is that we weren't putting a ramp on the top. So we had to add those ramps, and we typically add 1 at each T intersection. And that's why it was called a T ramp, because it was at a T intersection. And usually that requires us to not only install the ramp, but because of the slope requirements, we also have to lower a section of the sidewalk in front of the customer's house as well. So sometimes they might have a little curb behind them, or we'll have to go back on the property or regrade the property.
And how about the green and white spray paint that we see? What does that mean?
Okay. The green spray paint was originally intended for if you had a tripping hazard on the sidewalk. It was an indication to you, and it shows up at night when it's fresh, that you have a hazard there that you might trip and fall, because we want to avoid people tripping and falling. What we're seeing now is that if we go out and spray paint, some citizen will go out there and says, well, you're going to fix that. We want you to fix this as well because it's broken. So you'll see a lot more green paint out there. But the original intent was green paint was just to identify tripping hazards. And that does not mean that we're going to go out and fix it immediately. It just means that here's a problem that we will address. We don't know when we get here. When you go out and see the white paint, that means, yes, we're getting really close to doing that work. A lot of times that white paint is also an indication for utility companies to mark their utilities so that we don't hit them as well.
We've talked in the past about our Fix-It program. If someone puts in a request on Fix-It to have their sidewalk repaired, how long can they expect that those repairs will be made?
And again, it's going to be the same thing like any request. We're going to look at it. Are we working in the area? Is it a high priority? So Fix-It doesn't give it a higher priority than some other type of request.
Jerry, what is it?
And let me go on a little further, though.
Sure.
Is that when we get that request in, someone will immediately go out and take a look at that problem. And they go, okay, yes, is it a problem? We'll get to it. If it's a problem that we need to do immediately. So someone that actually goes out and physically takes a look at it.
Is there one thing you wish that people would know about sidewalks?
I would say that due to the environment that we have in Plano, sidewalks are the things that will fail the most. Is that, we have wet periods, we have dry periods. And the wet periods and dry periods have a big impact on the slopes and how the sidewalks function. The other thing is depending on where people decide to plant trees and landscaping, that can have a huge impact on sidewalks. Because the two main reasons that we fix sidewalks are either tripping hazards or because of slope. And the main slope that we're looking at most of the time in Plano is the slope from your house side to the street side. Basically, that slope is not supposed to exceed 2%, which means that sidewalks should drop 1 inch or less in that 4-foot area. And we have some areas in Plano where if I stand on that sidewalk for more than 5 minutes, my feet hurt because that slope is so great. Right now, because of all the sidewalk requests, we are only fixing it where that cross slope exceeds 4%. Later on, we're going to come back and do the ones that are 2 for 4%. But because of the amount that we have, we're taking care of the worst problems first, and we'll come back and get the lesser problems later. And the reason that cross slope is so important is that if you are in a wheelchair, and if it's greater than 4%, there's a very good chance that you can't stand the sidewalk. That slope will force you off the sidewalk into the grass. And we don't want that to happen. We don't want people falling over. So that's why that cross slope is so important. Again, the running slope as you walk along the sidewalk, it cannot exceed 5% unless the street exceeds 5%. Typically in Plano, we don't have too many areas where that comes into effect.
You know, Shannah, one thing I really like about Jerry, and I used to like when I used to interview him, is he can take a very complex topic and make it so that people can understand it so easily. You know, and he even does that today as well when he talks to our constituents in Plano. Jerry, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm proud to work with you, and congratulations on your more than 2 decades in our Public Works Department.
All right. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thanks for joining us on Inside Plano.
All right.
I love our interviews with Jerry Cosgrove. He is literally one of my favorite people in the city because he knows so much about so many things.
Yeah, and you know, I don't think there is a question for Jerry that can stump him. You know, he's like the encyclopedia of public works.
Exactly. Well, and of Plano history too. We've played some executive team games with him, and just the facts that he has about our past elected officials and the history of developments in Plano, it's really astounding.
It's so true what I said though. You know, back when I was a journalist, I used to interview a lot of people, and a lot of people who are experts in their field assume that the reporter knows something about it. And there were so many times I had so many conversations with people, and the topic, it would go so far above my head. They used jargon and terms. I had no idea what they were talking about. Jerry was really one of the best at taking really complicated topics and making it conversational and very easy for everyone to understand. That's one of the many reasons I always enjoy talking to Jerry. He's a good guy too.
Yeah, same. I love talking to Jerry. I learn something new every time. And, you know, we'd actually stopped recording at the moment, but I mentioned to him that we've had some of our Inside Plano listeners have suggested that we talk a little more about our sewage process because they've seen, you know, sewage drainage fee and things like that, and they're curious on how all that works. So I talked to Jerry, and I think we'll do that as a podcast episode next season. And I can't believe we're already thinking about season 4 starting next month, but sure enough. So we'll talk about all the business about business, the other kind of business, right?
That's a good idea. Well, Shannah, I know there's a very important survey that you want to talk about. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, you know, among the city, there are lots of ways to participate in the actual operations of the city, you know, whether you do that as a volunteer or you can join one of the boards and commissions. One of the boards that's very valuable to the city, all of them are, but I work a lot with this board, is the Senior Advisory Board. And every other year, they conduct a survey of Plano residents age 55 and older. That survey the results are provided to council just to give feedback on resident opinions of programs, services, needs, things that, you know, that are going well, things that could use improvement. So it's a very, very valuable survey, and that board conducts it. It is time for that survey. In fact, it's live now. I have put the link in the show notes. The survey is open through January 10th. So there's a little bit of time left to take it, but we want to make sure if you're 55 and older, or if you have a family member and you live in Plano and they're 55 and older, please ask them to take the survey. Very important. Unfortunately, as far as I know, I don't think we have hard copies printed anywhere this year. So it's 100% virtual. We'd value your input.
Shannah, let's talk about fog. And I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, we don't have fog in Plano.
Exactly.
What does fog stand for?
Fat, oil, grease.
You got it.
Yep.
So, there's no denying COVID aside that there's going to be a lot of cooking over the holidays. So what should you do with your leftover grease? Well, everyone knows indulging in decadent holiday foods affects our waistlines, but many people aren't aware that fog, fats, oils, and grease can also affect our plumbing system. Fog can clog your pipes and accumulate in municipal sewers, leading to costly blockages and overflows. Blockages can cause backups into your home. Sewage overflows can enter the storm drains and pollute our creeks. But there are some practices that you can do that are responsible disposal methods. Pour your cooled grease into a sturdy, sealable container and place it in the trash when full. Soak up small amounts of fog, like meat drippings, with a paper towel before scrubbing dishes clean. You can use a food strainer to prevent excess food scraps from going down the drain. And instead of pouring used cooking oil or turkey fry oil down the drain, recycle it. All you have to do is call our environmental waste services at 972-769-4150 to schedule a free pickup. I want to give that number one more time. Environmental Waste Services at 972-769-4150.
Yeah, I won't put a link to this in the show notes, but if you want a visual of why you should not pour grease down the drain, not to mention, by the way, if you own your house, this is very expensive to fix, and it is your expense to get it fixed if your pipes clog. Just Google the London fatberg, like an iceberg, but fatberg, and you will never think of pouring grease down the drain again the same way. It's pretty horrific. Well, I want to close the show like we started the show, just with a reminder that we love our Plano business community. We love our retail shops. We love our professional services. We love all of the folks who take care of us every day through small businesses, big business. We think you're valuable. So we want to encourage you, when you're shopping, think Plano first and shop Plano. And know that those shop owners have done a very good job of thinking about COVID as well, and giving you alternatives of ways to shop to mitigate your COVID risk, because Steve, COVID's not tired of us yet, is it?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, I have a few visual aids here for this next one. So don't forget, everyone, please, as we enter the holiday season, as with always, be sure you practice the COVID healthy habits. That means washing hands, using the hand sanitizer, wearing your face coverings and masks. We get the Plano logo right here on our masks. And please stay home if you're sick and practice social distancing. Easy things that we can all do to protect our neighbors, friends, and ourselves as well.
Absolutely. And you know what? The other benefit to that is it might also help you as we're in flu season, to avoid getting the flu, because also something that you don't want to catch. Well, Plano, here it is, December 2020 is coming to a close. I don't think either Steve or I want to make any guesses as to what 2021 will bring, but one thing we can promise you that it will bring is a fresh season of Inside Plano. So continue to give us feedback on the show. We value it. As you heard, we're already planning a show for next season based on your feedback. You can tell us what you think at askplano@plano.gov. That's askplano@plano.gov. Anytime, give us feedback or give us a like, give us a listen, recommend the show. Until next time, talk to you later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
And that's it for our Inside Plano. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did doing it.
If you have any comments or suggestions, send them to us at askplano@plano.gov. Bye.
Talk to you next month. The Inside Plano podcast is brought to you by the City of Plano